What's happening? Welcome to the 51st episode of the Slapstream with Djordje. I was thinking to stop at the 50th episode, but then I figured, there's like quite a few guys that I want to feature that deserve to be featured. So I decided to go up to, I don't know, 70, 100 or something. So if you have any suggestions, please write them down under this video, not in the live chat comments, because I would like to check it out and maybe feature some of these guys. I'm pretty well aware of the slap bass scene nowadays, and so I already have a pretty clear picture who I wanted to be in it. But if you have any suggestions, please let me know. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please slap that subscribe button. Like the video in advance. I know that you're gonna like it, and check out the Patreon. Check out the Patreon link. It's in the description of this video. So if you like the show, if you'd like to support it, please consider becoming a Patreon, and I'll be able to continue doing this for a long time. Also, if you'd like to donate, PayPal and Venmo links are in the description as well. Today, I have another special guest, very special guest. Oh, yeah, today is a special edition, special triple birthday edition. It's been a year since I've been doing this. A year. It's almost the end of the pandemic, or it is the end. I don't know. And I'm stoked that I was able to do this for a year. 51st episode is today. Can you imagine? Slap bass every Saturday. And Jason actually reminded me of that. Jason Hoyt, thank you. Slappy birthday. Thank you. It was my birthday 2 days ago, and it was my guest's birthday 3 days ago. And it's the show's birthday, I think, tomorrow or day after tomorrow. I'm not sure, but we're all here. So I decided this to be special birthday edition of the Slapstream with Djordje, and happy Slapper Day. Every Saturday is a Slapper Day. Thank you, Carolyn. And without further ado, I would like to introduce my guest for today. It's my friend, excellent bass player. You probably know him from legendary Shack Shakers. It's Mark Robertson. What's happening?
Howdy. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm all right, man. Just got to the hotel in Philly. It was kind of a nail biter, traffic in the northeast. But we were able to make it in time for me to grab some internet.
But we all miss that. We miss being on the road. You're having shows this weekend, right?
Yeah, I got like 5 shows this week, 4 shows next week. It's picking up nice. But yeah, it's so weird because we were shut down for so long, and the first time some people dread those like 12-hour drives, and especially if you're doing a van run. And the first time we did one, we went down to like Houston or something from Nashville, long drive, and I just couldn't have been happier to just be sitting in a van with nothing to do,
Yeah, there's something that gets you hooked, and then you're like, oh, when is the next tour? It's been a weird year without.
It's been a weird year.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm glad that things are picking up nicely for you. And so let us know, promote the show. Where are you playing today, tomorrow? What's going on this week?
It's funny, I can't remember. We're playing Philly tonight. I think, is it like, I don't know, the Rusty Nail? I really don't remember.
So which band are you playing? So
with Dave Graham and the Eskimo Brothers.
Oh, cool.
That's really my main. I do that more than anything else, for sure. And it's an awesome band. Really fun guys. I really enjoy their company. And they're really DIY. Like, they book their own shows. They're their own management. They're their own label. They make their own merchandise. They have like the printing presses in the garage, and
all right.
So there's like just no politics, and we don't fight. We just have fun, and we make a good living and get to see the world, so life is good.
Awesome.
I'm enjoying it. I still play with Derek Hoke. I'll be playing with him next Tuesday. He's amazing. And Probably somebody else. Mark Colley and people like that. But the Eskimo Brothers is the main thing. David Graham.
So where people can find out about your shows? I mean, let's talk about this week. So for Eskimo Brothers, on the Eskimo Brothers website, they can find out where you're playing.
EskimoBrothers.net. And then I know for sure we're doing Skinny Dennis in Brooklyn tomorrow.
Okay, cool.
Tonight, I want to say it's called the Rusty. It was a club I hadn't heard of in Philly. Like, it's not a club like Shack Shaker's ever played or anything. I think it's called the Rusty Nail, but I could be really wrong about that.
All right. So people should go to Eskimo Brothers website and find out about your shows, and then hopefully pack those shows with Slapstream guests.
Heck yeah.
So if anyone is in Philly, all right. So we got like quite a few like birthday like happy birthday to you, belated birthday, like you know.
Thank you.
3 days
Yours
ago.
is like the day after mine, isn't it?
Yeah. We've been celebrating every year, like, you know, with Mike at the Ink and Iron, but yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. So here are the comments. Slappy, joy. Happy birthday to everyone from Reverend Taco and Jose Arana, making this a special episode. Awesome. So we have some people gathering. All right. So I want this episode, you know, to be about you, about your career. I want to present your work. You've been, you know, in this business for a long time. And I would like to start basically from the beginning. You know, how did you start? You know, how did you become interested in music and in bass and slap? And tell us everything.
Yeah, well, I'm from Southern California originally. And I'm about the right age where punk rock was, you know, starting to happen. So I got a P bass and an Ampeg, you know, and just started playing, and I got fairly well known for doing that. But and that branched out into a bunch of stuff where I was finally around 92. I quit my day job, and haven't had one since. So I've been real fortunate there. I always, though, it's funny, like when I was a young kid, there was a rockabilly scene in LA that predated like even the Stray Cats and stuff. But the idea of taking on like slap upright, I just didn't quite know what it was yet. Like I didn't even know how they did it. Or, you know, I didn't even know that sound was the guy slapping the bass, you know. So I kind of put it off, but I owned a few cool records, and I always kind of wanted to. Then in 94, this contemporary Christian artist, like gospel dude, awesome guy, he offers me a tour that paid more money than I'd ever made before. And but I had to play upright on 3 songs. And I'm like, well, how far away is the tour? He said 2.5 months. I said, great, I play upright. And I took out a loan that day for an old 40s K, figured out how to put a pickup on it, all that stuff. And by the time the tour started, I could play his 3 songs, you know. And they weren't like slap heavy or anything. But in the meantime, I was going out to clubs a lot in Chicago. I just moved to Chicago. And a buddy of mine turned me on to this band called the Moondogs, this rockabilly band. Great rockabilly band. And the bass player was Jimmy Sutton, who, you know, later has become a very dear friend. But we would just go watch Jimmy and freak out and then go home and try and figure out what he did, you know, and how to do those combos and how to get that tone, you know, and all that stuff, which Jimmy still just has such amazing tone. You know, you can be into this for years and not quite figure out how he does it. But you start to figure out your own thing, you know, within that. But and then from there, it went from like I couldn't get any upright gigs, you know, because I was known as an electric player. And then, you know, fast forward into the 2000s, I couldn't get a gig as an electric player because I was only known as an upright guy. Now, thank goodness, I got a good variety going of gigs where I get to play a little bit of everything. That makes me happy.
That's great. So you started playing upright kind of in the 90s?
94.
94. You know the exact year.
I do. Wow. Just because of the way it worked out. And that's the year I met Jimmy Sutton.
So we had him as a guest like a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago, and he's been a huge influence on so many people. And
absolutely,
you're completely right. And he has an excellent sound, an excellent tone. And for me, he was always kind of the sound of slap bass of Chicago. But now he lives in Nashville, right?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, it's funny. I saw him more when he lived in Chicago. He lives, he doesn't live too far away. We went out a couple of times and we bumped into each other a couple of times. But the pandemic kind of screwed things up. But Jimmy is like the closest thing we have to a modern Willie Dixon. I think he's got that perfect gut string sound and that pocket. That the closest thing I can think of to that Chicago Willie Dixon vibe, which you could do a heck of a lot worse. Willie Dixon was probably my biggest influence, and but I gotta say, in a way, it started with Jimmy, and I kind of had to move over to Willie because when I was listening to upright guys, I liked slap bass. I wanted to do it, but I'd go see Jimmy live. But on record, I was kind of listening to a lot of like Ron Carter, and I really like Slam Stewart a lot, and just kind of these slightly more esoteric versions of it. Then, of course, you can't help but listen to Bill Black and the kind of normal stuff, and Lee, and the kind of the I guess the mainstream stuff. But then there's so many ways you can go with that after a while too. That I don't know if it's more interesting than the rockabilly thing, but it's interesting that there's more to it. I mean, slap bass started a very long time ago with the Dixieland dudes. Early 1900s. So there's a lot of stuff you can mine. And that's before we get into all that great Roma stuff, like Tariff the Hydukes. We've talked about that. Vlad Virol, right?
Vlad Virel.
Yeah, that guy. I mean, he's just a freak. I don't even know what he's doing. It's so beautiful. And then you see like all the applications. I saw some Japanese metal band, and I wish I could remember what they're called, that had a steel string upright player slapping the whole, doing like really kind of brutal metal stuff, and it was gorgeous. Like I don't see why Jason Burns always used to say that he thought there should be more upright in metal because you can get those great gallops and stuff. And I totally agree. I'm not a metal guy, but it seems obvious that more people should probably play heavier music with one.
Slap should, by my opinion, should just be more present. It's such a cool sound, and you can get, you can play any really music genre. And for me, that was always it. Just a tool that you can play and express yourself in different music styles. So,
yeah. If you listen to like, Larry Taylor, you know who he was?
Yeah.
Played for Tom Waits, and he would do a thing that was just pretty relaxed, but then he'd just pop a few things here and there, push the beat or pull the beat. And
he was great with Hollywood Fats, I think. I like those records, yeah.
I've seen Fats play and I've seen Larry Taylor play, but I never got to see them play together.
Oh, okay.
And
who have you seen Larry Taylor playing with? Tom Waits?
With Tom Waits.
Oh, okay.
And I saw one gig of him playing with Kim Wilson. Fabulous Thunderbirds guy, the great harp player.
Yeah.
Doing like a blues gig. And of course, I've heard that amazing Hollywood Fats record that I think Bill Bateman's on drums and Larry Taylor's on bass. All the great LA dudes, the West Coast like jump blues guys. Yeah, that
was a cool sound. We lost Larry a couple of years ago, 2 years ago or so. But he made an excellent mark. So I got the beginning. So you basically started on electric bass and switched to an upright. Upright. Do you play any other instruments?
Yeah, I actually started on classical guitar.
Oh, really? For how long?
Yeah,
I started on classical guitar too.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You're good at it, though. I'm not. Now, I played guitar on most of the Shack Shakers records when I was in the band, but I don't really feel like a guitar player. Like, I have a bunch of them, and I think I'm, if you're musical enough as a person, and I produce records, so I'll get a sound in my head, and I can figure out how to put that together, but I ain't going to show up and just jam with people on guitar. I'm a bass player, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think that everyone kind of, or almost everyone, associate you with upright bass. So
Yeah.
yeah. So we got a comment from Jason Hoyt. If you listen to Robert Trujillo's slap bass with suicidal tendencies, it's not too far of a stretch to imagine slap upright in metal at all.
Okay.
So,
I guess I could see that.
yeah. I played one show with, you know,
Hoyt's a friend of mine, though. I'm not going to give him too much of a good time about that comment, though.
Yeah, I played a show when I played with Tiger Army in Brazil. One of the shows was with suicidal tendencies.
Oh wow!
And yeah, I was impressed with drums, and it was good with Dave Lombardo.
Robert wasn't on bass, or was he?
He was not. No. I don't know who was the bass player, you know, but I was mostly watching Dave Lombardo on drums, and I was thinking like, oh yeah, slap on the upright would sound killer on this. I mean, slap can really sound excellent. You know, it's just.
Well, I used to love it. You know, especially, I mean, we had a lot of great drummers in the Shack Shakers over the years, but the main guy was a guy named Brett Whitaker. And the guy was just a pile driver and a really fast double kick thing. Something I never really wanted to do until we did it. And then the muscle you can get out of an upright when you match it up with really fast kick patterns, you can't do it on an electric. No way. You wouldn't get the same muscle, that same force. I think it's a beautiful thing, you know.
Absolutely, I love it. Yeah, I mean, I love slap bass with any.
Yeah, there's a ton of guys that play great slap bass that don't like drummers at all. You know, they don't see the need for it. And that's cool too.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. You know, I love playing. You know, with the drummer. You know, once you get that pocket down, it sounds like magic. You know,
I think so too. We're not in a real fashionable place with it with slap bass right now. I don't think there's this kind of new, at least in Nashville, there's this kind of hipster country thing. And it's very fashion correct and old school, and you know you gotta only talk about obscure artists. You know, you don't talk about Buck Owens, you talk about Wynn Stewart, you know, or whatever, Dick Curlis. But I think some people sometimes associate the slap bass thing with this sort of, you know, flaming bowling shirt kind of Happy Days sound, you know, like a lightweight kind of 50s sound. But most of my favorite 50s records, like Rock and Roll Trio, is not lightweight sounding, in my opinion. It's beautiful and it's muscular, and you know. But I think we're due for a couple younger guys to come up and show us something new with it, you know. Show us something we don't know.
It's time. So they should just watch all these 50 episodes of the Slapstream and learn all the tricks and add, you know, spice it up a little bit.
You got some players. I watched a few. You know, when I left the Shack Shakers a few years back, Thomas Leroux was my number one choice. So like, you got to have him replace me. You know, he would be the perfect guy. And I think he might have done it, you know, but this is a little tough because he lives in LA. Shack Shakers are in the middle of the country. And they wound up going with a guy I really like named Fuller Condon. Not as heavy of a player. He used to be in a killer band.
Is that a guy from Two Gentlemen Band?
Two-Man Gentlemen?
Yeah,
and
okay.
That's one of my favorite roots bands. And that's what Fuller's really great at. Like no drums, just that hot jazz thing. It was gorgeous. You know, I loved it. But
he's not that big of a slapper, right?
No.
Yeah, okay. No. I seen the Shack Shakers a few times.
Really hear it.
Oh, okay. I seen the Shack Shakers a few times, a couple times with you, and I think once with him. And my old band, Fish Tank Ensemble, was on the same.
Shoot, I'm kind of losing you a little bit.
All right. It seems that I lost you for a second, but we're back.
Oh, I thought I lost you.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what happened. Who knows?
Okay. I think I got pretty good internet here at the old hotel, but I don't know.
Yeah. It seems that everything is working fine. I don't want to jinx it.
But
what I was saying, I had a chance to see the two-man gentleman band quite a few times because we're on the same. We had the same booking agent. So,
and Andy lives in Orange County. The singer.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Does that band still around? Is that band still around?
No, they're not.
Okay.
Andy works for Disney now. He does a lot of writing and stuff for Disney, and he also wanted to start a family. Didn't want to tour as much.
Okay.
But God, what a great band that was.
Oh yeah, they were great. They were excellent. So did you have any formal education as far as bass lessons or something?
Well, sort of. Like I said, I studied classical guitar, and I come from a really blue collar family. So when I got out of high school, I enrolled in college to be a music major, and it's so funny. My family were furious about it. They just saw it as a complete waste of time, and weren't terribly supportive of it. So I did I did some college level stuff, but I didn't finish it. And I studied with a very serious classical guitar player and a couple really serious bass teachers in LA when I was a kid, because one of my very first bands, it's a typical LA in the 80s story. We were signed to a major. We were signed to MCA, but the record never even came out. But they wouldn't let us out of our deal. So I'm in this band for 7 years and just practiced constantly, played once a month, So I just studied. I took voice lessons. I took a million bass lessons and just really wanted to get the theory end of it together. Upright, I got to say, is really, I bought a Ron Carter method book, a Ray Brown method book, and watched Jimmy Sutton every chance I had. And then when I moved to Nashville, and then you start watching Dave Rowe and Mark Winchester, they were kind of probably the biggest two guys in Nashville when I moved there. And in a lot of ways still are, but of course, but now we got Joe Fick, and who's just one of the very best, and great guy too. I watched his podcast or his live stream with you, and I watched Thomas's and Kim's. I've got to a couple.
Yeah, so you still have a few to watch.
I do. Well, the funny thing is you kind of have to too, because in our world, and it's something I love about this community of slap players, is most of us are friends. It's like we have each other's phone numbers, and we keep in touch, and it's a very encouraging scene, I think. Did I lose you again? Because you're frozen. I'm not. I don't know what's going on. So I might be waiting. I might be talking into the air. I don't really know. Well, I'm for sure talking in the air. It's physics. Back?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we're back. Okay. So hopefully this is not going to happen too often.
It's
but
funny,
yes, you're right.
when I'm in a story, I look fine from my end.
Okay.
And it just looks like you stopped moving for a minute.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I hope it was not a funny face, one of those.
No.
Yeah, you're right. Most of us are friends, so that was always kind of my goal, to connect everyone, that it's interested in this subject, since there's not that many of us, and then kind of spread it out as much as possible, and then connect people that are in different music styles, because people in rockabilly or psychobilly, would exchange ideas, but not that many people that play world music or experimental jazz and any of those styles. So I tried with the Slapstream to include as much as as much possible, the variety, from bluegrass to experimental to anything. So,
Absolutely.
and I think that some of the best episodes were with guys that you would not expect to be on it. So, but it's a good thing.
Kind of what we need with this right now. It's not just this one kind of cute thing. It's not about standing on bases, and that stuff's fine and good, but there's a lot of ways to express yourself with this instrument.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, I agree. And I see from the comments that I have bad internet connection, so you're the good one. So sorry.
So I should just keep talking then.
Yes, you can. Everybody can hear you except me if this happens.
Oh no.
But hopefully,
And you're the only interesting one on this stream right now.
No. It's this is your story. Let's talk about. Let's move on. So, what was the first band that you played with? I mean, not that you played the upright with.
There was a couple. It was kind of a hobby for me. I was making my living as an electric player.
Oh.
And I wanted to be an upright player, but it takes time. And like I say, my gospel gig, I was good enough to play a couple of his folkier tunes on upright, but the slap thing was a whole other can of worms. But I really wanted to make that happen. So I had a little like a cowpunk kind of band called This Train. And I started incorporating more and more upright into that, which was really hard because I was the front man too. So I had to learn a lot of things at once. And
so were you singing as well?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we put out like 4 records. It was a fun little band. And then I was in a band in Chicago just, again, for fun. We didn't make any dough. I had other gigs I made money at called the Fireflies. And it's this awesome guitar player named Steve Soblowski who was in the Moondogs with Jimmy Sutton.
Huh.
And he was like, because in the early 90s, I just didn't want to do rock music anymore for a while. I really was more interested in roots music and, jump blues and Western swing and rockabilly music. And so this guy, Steve Soblowski, he asked me to join a band with him. I'm like, dude, I'm pretty new to this. And I remember him going, hey, do you have $200? I said, yeah, why? He goes, meet me at Tower Records tonight at 6 or whatever it was. He goes like, and he just bought a bunch of records and put them in a cart, and handed them off to me to learn, to go deeper and deeper. And, that's how I got into Slim Harpo and Louis Jordan and Bull Moose Jackson.
So cool. So that was all in SoCal?
Chicago, actually.
That was in Chicago. Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, I lived in Chicago from about like 92 to 98. And then from 98 to 2000, I kept my apartment in Chicago, but I had a publishing deal in a band that was doing really well in Nashville. So I lived both places until I realized I wasn't going back to Chicago. And I got rid of my place there and just bought a little house in Nashville. And Nashville's rad. It's a good place to live.
You're still in Nashville, right?
Yeah.
But Nashville kind of changed a lot in last 10 years or so.
I wouldn't say for the better.
Oh, okay.
But mainly it's just housing prices are getting silly. But it's still a good scene, and it's a lot more diverse than people think or know. Like there's a great punk rock scene there. There's an electronic music scene there. There's killer. We got a couple of great like kind of artsy stoner metal type bands, heavier music that are really good. Red Feather and Howlin' Giant and one other is escaping me, which is funny because they're the biggest one of the bunch. But bunch of terrific bands in a bunch of genres. So where there's good music, there's good food, there's good you kind of an arts community. So I think it's.
I love Nashville. I love Nashville.
I do too.
Yeah, I don't go too often, but
it's a real friendly city still, I think.
Do you miss SoCal? How often do you come here?
Not often enough. I used to be in a really odd band when I was a kid. It was like a Christian punk band, and I still, those guys do little reunions there. We did a record again in 2018, and so I'll fly out. We'll do just a couple gigs here and there. And now the main guy in the Altar Boys was the name of the band. He's got a rockabilly band now, and he's turned into this really great rockabilly guitar player, singer. So I've gone out there to record with him, or he's come out here to record with me a couple times, or well, not here, but Nashville. And so I still get there a bit, you know. I miss when you go back to where you're from. There's a certain, it's almost a spiritual thing where you feel like this kind of extra connected to it. Because, you know, when I was a kid, I was a skateboarder and a surfer, and I raced BMX and mountain bikes, and then you think of the LA punk rock scene, which is very different than the New York punk scene. And so there's a lot of things that I love about it and miss. But I think I'll probably be in Tennessee for a good long time. I'm real happy there. And it's easier to tour from Nashville because any direction you go, literally, there's a major city less than 4 hours away. So it's a great place to launch a tour. And really, you can still in Nashville, you can still go like to the bank and go, hey, I kind of need a home loan, and I play bass for a band you've never heard of, and they won't laugh you out of the place.
Oh, really? Wow, that's interesting.
Like, it's valid to be a self-employed musician there.
Wow, that's cool.
You know what I mean? Yeah. You know, you don't have to be made to feel like some dumb kid, you know, when you
go to,
buy a house or whatever.
That's a cool story. So, and then, so where are we at with the story? But by the way, you don't have your bass with you, right?
No, I'm sorry. Okay. It's at the gig.
Yeah, all right. But yeah, so sorry, people, you're not gonna hear Mark slapping, but you can go to I
can only show you what not to do.
The first time I saw you play was at a Hardly Strictly Bluegrass Festival in San Francisco. It was like 2005, 6, something like that.
Dude, I remember that gig because Dolly went on right after.
It was Dolly, yeah. Dolly
was an odd bill that was.
Yeah, it was great bill, you know. But I remember there was, I don't know, 1 million people there or something.
It was
like for Dolly, it was crazy. And you guys played on the same stage as her, right?
Yeah.
The
last 3 bands on that stage was Split Lip Brayfield, who have a great kind of very oddball upright player.
Yeah.
For one string bass, made out of a gas tank, Jeff, and he's awesome. And then it was us, and then it was Dolly Parton. And at one point, Buddy Miller's a friend of mine, and he was playing for Emmylou Harris at the time. So he drags Emmylou over to see us.
Oh, wow.
So at one point, we were doing this crazy outdoor gig for it was like an ocean of people. And I looked to my right, and there's Emmylou and Dolly watching the Shack Shakers, and they didn't seem horrified. You know, it was really kind of exciting. Kind of a thrill.
That's a cool story. I remember that show very well. It was a good one. And then I seen you in San Francisco again in a club. I think it was on Van Nuys, if I remember correctly. It was one of the clubs that usually rockabilly,
like Slims or 12 Galaxies or one of those places.
I don't think so. No, it was definitely not 12 Galaxies. It was definitely not Slims.
Bottom of the Hill, maybe.
Those are like all standard places. It was not that obvious. It was something that I usually would not go and see shows. I forgot about it now. But I intentionally went to see you with a friend of mine. It was a good show. I loved it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And for how long were you? So you moved to Nashville and then joined. So you had a deal with which band? That's still not Shack Shakers.
No. JD and I were friends by then. I saw him play with an early version of the Shack Shakers, and I remember thinking, man, if he ever gets a band that's as good as him, he's going to be unstoppable, you know. And we became friends probably 97-ish. Then around 2000, I had a residency. I played every Monday at this kind of really cool bar in East Nashville called the Slow Bar. It was kind of the hipster central at the time. And I had great players in this little trio with Kenny Vaughn and a guy named Jimmy Lester, who was in Low Straitjackets, and a bunch of other great bands. And we just did whatever we wanted, you know, goofed around playing blues or rockabilly music or rock and roll music. And JD would come see us, and Kenny Vaughn was a big fan. He said, we should just get JD to jump up and do a song every now and again. Then the next thing you know, he's in the band. And then we become better friends. Then the next thing you know, his bass player can't do a tour, and I had a couple weeks off. It was a tour with Hank 3, and they were just about ready to put out their first real record on Bloodshot. It was almost done. I came into the studio and played on 2 songs on the Cockadoodle Don't record, and we went out with Hank 3 and for a couple weeks. And before the tour was over, JD was kind of like, what do you think? You want to stick around, you know? And it was tough because I didn't feel like, I wasn't sure I could make a living at it, and I was making a decent living. So I was a little nervous on that, but I just thought he was so good and so special that I thought I would be kicking myself if I didn't try it. So I did, and I wound up staying in the band over 14 years, like maybe 15. And man, we saw the whole world, and a lot of great things happened. You know, we got a lot of film work and TV work, and you know, it's like all these places you've never been that it affords you to go. It's like, you know, I've been to Norway, I don't know how many times, but it never crossed my mind I'd ever go there. But the Shack Shakers just happened to kind of catch fire there for a while, and then Spain starts taking off. You know how it goes. Like somehow Spain's great, Norway's great, Sweden not that great, you know, but then it's great next year. And then, you know, maybe Belgium takes off for a while or whatever. But we got to see all these amazing places, and it got to a point where we were spending more time of our year in Europe because they seemed to be a little more freaked out about us in the States. We did good in the States, but we couldn't make the same living.
So you were more successful in Europe?
Yeah, definitely.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, by a large margin.
And I didn't know that you've been in a band for 15 years. That's
Almost.
A long time.
Yeah,
that's a long time.
I played on the tail end of the Cockadoodle Don't record, and then let's see if I can remember the order. I produced and played, you know, on Believe, Pandalirium, Swamp Blood, Agridustrial, and Southern Surreal. And there's one more in there I'm forgetting. And then I was kind of playing. We were slowing down a little bit. JD didn't want to tour for a little while, so I started playing with the Eskimo Brothers, like kind of part-time. And at one point, the way my life was working with session work and different things, and the Shack Shakers were kind of getting pulled in a direction I didn't really want to go. I'm not saying that they were wrong, but they wanted to go, JD in particular, and there was one other kind of influence in the band that I didn't care for. I like JD. We're still very close. But they were talking about going for this more kind of like very more acoustic and more old time. And I love that music. I wasn't ready to picture the Shack Shakers doing it yet. I thought we kind of invented something that was fairly unique. And I was very happy there. But when it just seemed like the right time to just go ahead and go, like, I think I'm gonna, you know, I've done this over 14 years. It's time to just try anything else, you know, and see what else is out there. I've always kind of liked having a few irons in the fire, you know, and work on different kinds of projects, you know, and it's nice to be home enough to get some session work, because session work is really fun. You really get to meet a lot of different people and play on a wide variety of things. Some I would never talk about because they're terrible, but some, or it's not my thing, but some really is, you know. And so that it worked out well. And like JD and I have been threatening to make another record together. We've been discussing it. He's got a little concept.
Would it be Shack Shakers?
Huh?
Would that be for Shack Shakers or something completely different?
I'm not sure. He was talking about putting it just as me and his name.
Okay.
and just basically just be the two of us. I'd play guitar, do the percussion stuff and bass, and he's a great keyboard player. Of course, one of the greatest harp players, and his banjo thing, and he's actually starting to play guitar a little more. He's just a great musician, you know.
He is super talented, kind of like all around, like a complete package, you know, excellent showman. I mean, one of the best, really.
It was sort of heartbreaking. He's such a good showman that I think for some people it obscured how talented he really was. His lyrics are mind-blowing. He's an incredible lyric writer. He's a great piano player. And he's really a music student, you know, but people go like, yeah, you know, throw your pubes out again or whatever, you know. So, I mean, I like that too. I like the punk rock side of the band, but I liked that he was this weird kind of cultural figure of his own making, you know. Like he's made films now. He's put out a couple of books. He's done all kinds of crazy stuff. Just a ridiculously talented fella.
Absolutely. Does he live in Nashville?
No, he lives about 2 hours away. Once we got some money, when I started playing with him, he was living in Nashville. And then we got some money for like a Geico commercial, I think. Mm-hmm. Like we got like a lot of money, and he bought some house out in the woods, but you know, near where his parents live in Paducah, Kentucky. And he still lives there, and it's a really neat little house he's got. I think he's got a fair amount of property out there. And he just kind of lives out in the woods, you know, because he wanted to be closer to his sister and his mom and dad. And I think it's good for him.
Yeah, and you're right. The Shack Shakers changed like the sound kind of a lot, and that might be. I always that kind of. I mean, I associated that a little bit with you because that's kind of when that change happened. Now I realize, you know, from your story that actually that was kind of the reason why you decided to move on and stop playing with the Shack Shakers.
Well, and I just didn't feel like I maybe had as much value to give them. Because we made those kind of very ridiculous sounding records that I love. You know, me and JD used to call them heavy metal Disney records.
They're awesome. You know, I love those records. And then I think that's what people associate with Shack Shakers the most. And then I think that's what people kind of expect from the Shack Shakers as well.
Well, unfortunately, I was one of those people too. I like the really adventurous records. It was starting to wear JD down, and I totally get why. Because those records, you know, they take months to make. And we used to, yeah, they're on the Pandalirium record, dude. We had an engineer just so we could be as obsessive as we wanted to be. And I owned the studio at the time, so that made it easier. But we hired an engineer from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Then he would go home, and we hired a guy from 6 p.m. till 3 a.m. so that we could work those kind of hours every single day. And eventually he just got tired of doing it. He's like, what? Can't we just walk in and record and leave? And like, well, not and make Pandalirium, you know. You could do it, but not for the kind of records we were making. And, you know, I'm pretty guilty of overproducing, and I don't really apologize for it. I like how kind of preposterous that can be, you know, especially in roots music. And if we got a good enough budget and I can hire a bass clarinet, and like I even know what that is, you know, or hire, you know, these different weird elements and really try stuff. And we go out for every night after we stop recording, we go out down alleyways and stuff with tape recorders and just try and get a recording of a cat fight or any number of things, you know. And it's a very obsessive way to live, you know, and it's not for everyone. And I think it just took its toll on them personally.
Oh, didn't know that. Yeah, I kind of associated that approach with him as well. So
no, he was definitely into that at first, which is why we kind of became a production team for a while, because we both were into this. We had very odd parameters about how to make a record. Like, we wanted all these fancy sound effects, but we made every sound effect ourselves, if that makes sense. You know, we go to hardware stores and take tape recorders with us everywhere. we had to make our own. There was nothing digital about that, you know. It had to be done kind of the old-fashioned way, and we really wanted to sort of stretch. We wanted to stay very respectful of deep roots music, but not copy it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, but I think that should be the goal for every artist, you know, like to put its own stamp. And then I think the legendary Shack Shakers really did that. You know, you guys created your own sound that it's very unique, and people associate that sound with you. It's not with anyone else.
Well, yeah, I mean, that makes me really happy. I think we had our own thing, and I think it's really special. And I think it's, you know, JD and I talk about it a lot, and which is why he might have it in him to do one more ridiculous record with me, just so we can exercise those, you know, scratch those itches, you know. But not everything needs to be that way, you know. I mean, I produce the Eskimo Brothers, and they're not crazy overproduced records because they don't. It wouldn't be honest for that band, you know, because that's more of an in the moment, you know, kind of band. There's definitely a few tricks here and there, and they give me some leeway to do that when I'm producing, but it's David Graham's kind of vision. So I always have to, I never made JD do anything he didn't want to do. I don't think. We were very, we figured out how to always stay on the same page with it. You know, do you want to do this or this? Well, maybe we'll meet over here somewhere. And, you know, you figure it out with any project. But that's definitely one of the weirdest ones I've ever done that was successful.
Definitely, and very unique. I love those albums.
Well,
Carolyn D is asking you. I assume this is the question when you were talking about LA and I mean SoCal.
Oh yeah, my old buddy, yeah, Mike from the Ultrabillies, yeah.
Is that a band that you were talking about earlier?
He's an old pal of mine, the singer of that band. He came out to Tennessee maybe a year ago, over a year ago, it was pre-pandemic. And I played on a couple of tracks of what wound up on an Ultrabillies record, I believe. Mm-hmm. That's what they were for, at least. He has a bass player that's really good, too, that there was just something slightly different he wanted me to do, I guess. And also Jimmy Lester from Los Straight Jackets played drums on a couple of tracks. And I think Mike just wanted to try the Nashville thing, you know, because he's an Orange County guy, born and raised, you know.
Okay. How's the slap bass scene in Nashville?
You know, it's good. I mean, Mark Winchester's still there, and he's on a good night. There's nobody better. Dave Rowe's still there. Good night, nobody better. Joe Fick's still there. Nobody better. And I mean, nobody can out Joe Fick. But the kind of comedic thing, to me at least, like on the lower Broadway scene, which I only do that once a week. I'm not a huge fan of those kind of tourist gigs, but there's two guys now that play the lower Broadway scene that are ripping off Joe Fick so bad. It's bizarre. I don't even see how they could look themselves in the mirror. I mean, they're copying his facial moves. They both play the exact same bass, you know, one of those old Englehart swing masters that Joe plays. And it's like, you're not going to out Joe Fick. You know, the guy's the king of his world, you know, just incredible facility and awesome guy. And he's funny in his own way. Joe's got his own sense of how to perform and entertain. That's unique to Joe. So it's so obvious when you see these people try and copy him. But it's pretty pathetic.
Are they good players at least, or
I don't know. They're fine. I don't know, but they aren't going to come close to Joe. No way. I mean, that guy's pretty special. You know, he's in his own category, and
I love Joe. He's great. I had him as a guest on the Slapstream.
I consider Joe a very dear friend. Yeah. You know, I was at his birthday party recently. You know, stuff like that. In fact, I want to say either yesterday or today, him and Lori just had their third child. So, congrats, Joe.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah.
Let's see.
But you know what I'm saying right now? We need somebody new who's trying their own thing. Don't copy Dave Rowe. Don't copy Joe Fick. Don't copy Winchester. Like, come up with your own vibe.
So there's no like a new blood in the slap world in Nashville, except those two guys that are
maybe I
still
haven't
trying to find themselves.
I mean, there's more than a couple of guys coming up. I just don't. I don't know that they're bringing anything new to the party yet. You know what I mean? And I think we're ready for that. You know, you just can't beat Joe or Dave Rowe or those guys at what they do. They do what they do. You got to figure out your own way of doing it, which is full circle what we were talking about earlier of all the ways you could use slap bass that are potentially wonderful and interesting. Well, people need to tap into their own thing and stop kind of painting by numbers and copying other people.
That's the goal. It's a hard goal, but that's the goal.
Well, I mean, we all, don't you think? I mean, I can't speak for you, but when I first heard anything, any good music, it could be Led Zeppelin, it could be anything. You go like, how the heck did they do that? And it makes you go like, as an artist, you go like, I don't think any of us can ever truly do it, but at least inside of me, I'm going like, I want to do something that's never been done. And maybe people won't even like that because it's unfamiliar. But I think we all suspect we can do something that's never been done. And to a tiny extent, we pull it off. Nobody plays bass the way you play bass. Some people try. But you've got your own corner of the world. Maybe I've got my own little couple little things, you know, that are unique to me. But I think more young musicians should spend the time going like, I think this little trick might be mine. That's not me ripping off Djordje or somebody. You know, it's like, I think that's mine. And or I ripped off Thomas and did it wrong, and now it's mine.
Yeah.
And
that works too.
Yeah. Whatever. And then really start to celebrate your own voice, you know, because your own story is so much better than any story you could make up, you know.
Absolutely. My thing was always, I always was leaning to that, like to finding my own stamp and in bass playing and slap in songwriting and composition in general. But I was always wanted to learn everything that was out there. You know, I studied classical music for 14 years and jazz for 8 years, and so I always wanted to be capable of doing any upright bass gig. So if that was, you know, symphony orchestra or opera or Romani, Gypsy, and Balkan, all the time signature, or Indian music, Middle East, or whatever. I just wanted to make sure that I'm capable of doing it on a decent level. Mm-hmm. And then after that was kind of like more like a nice icing on a cake where I wanted to place myself in that whole world and try to find my own voice.
Yeah.
But it was mostly my path was mostly learning, and then after, you know, maybe 10 years of playing bass, I figured out, I want to have. Actually, that's not true. You know, like earlier, I wanted to find, you know, something new. I experimented with different patterns and trying to find my own thing. But I think it's very important to go through that. I mean, at least for me, you know, everybody's like completely different. But for me, it was very important to go through those steps, how to understand music and how to approach it, and then being capable of playing bass in kind of any music genre that comes my way.
Well, stop me if I'm wrong, but something I love about your playing in particular is I know you're Serbian, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I remember when I first started touring Europe, and I think it's wonderful that like Italians love rockabilly. But you ever seen an Italian band try and act like hillbillies? It's like, it's fucked up. You know, it's like, it's not good. You know, it's like they're trying to, it's a bit method acting. You know, it's like, you're not a hillbilly and you've never ran a moonshine still. You don't even know what that is. But you have an awesome heritage that you can bring with you.
I agree. Yeah.
I want to hear about where you're from, not where I'm from. I like with your playing, I can feel that you brought the Eastern European sound with you, and that sound that you got a lot of the Roma thing in your playing, the gypsy stuff, and you got you're not afraid, you're not trying to reinvent yourself as some hillbilly from Arkansas or a guy from Chicago. You can love those people, but I hear you when I hear you play. And my favorite players, Joe Fick, and Jake Irwin, some of the better players. Like I feel an honesty in their playing and their storytelling, with their instrument.
Absolutely, I agree with you. That was also kind of like my thing. I never wanted to be able to, not to be able. I never wanted to pretend that I was an American from 1955, since I'm not.
Yeah.
And
but dude, we played those same festivals in Europe. You know what I'm talking about. I mean, it can be pretty goofy.
Absolutely. So it was always that European, like a copying of the like mid. I mean, obviously, I love rockabilly and blues and all those like American styles. But if I wanted to make my own thing, it would never be just that, because it would always be a copy. And there's actually a saying that in Serbia, when I was about to move to the States, they would ask me like, why are you doing that? You play that music, but that's kind of like selling ice to Eskimos. And I was like, no, I have to move there. I have to do this over there. Where's the roots of everything that I like, kind of. And I'm glad I did it. It's like 18 years ago. And
yeah, definitely. It worked out great for Kim as well, and because really, I think like the psychobilly dudes, when I first saw psychobilly stuff, I didn't quite get it. I didn't feel like it was particularly psycho or Billy, but then there's as I got into it more and more and more, and I see Thomas playing and especially Kim Neckerman, the guy he's invented his own sound and his own style, and I still that weird ass what he does out of both sides of his hand thing, that speed demon stuff, and he's absolutely innovated a sound that, I mean, how many players are trying to imitate now? And not
it's interesting. And talking about creating your own thing, he really did it. And then how influential it is, like you can just see how many people want to play coffin basses now, and it's and that's kind of like a really funny thing. I wonder how Kim, what he thinks about it, but it's just like,
gotta be flattering to an extent, don't you think?
It is flattering, but it's so weird. It's such a distinctive, instrument.
Right, that's his thing.
Why would you? It's his thing. It's just like so, like, huh?
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm getting at with all this stuff. Like, if you're inspired by Kim, you should be. He's rad. He's an amazing, gifted player, and he wants you to believe he's a jerk, but he's actually one of the sweetest people ever. And but he likes coming off as grouchy. But he's an awesome guy, and a complete innovator. So that should inspire you and me to go like, well, I want to be an innovator, not I want to copy an innovator. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, I agree with you like 100%. As I said, like for me, it was important to learn how to play the most traditional way. If I play, with Deke Dickerson, when I moved to the States, I played a lot with Deke, and I wanted to get that traditional sound down. When I played in Scotty Moore's band, if I played with Eddie Bondo, Joe Clay, or any of those guys, I wanted to spice it up a little bit, but I wanted to sound as traditional as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And because I thought that's what the gig asks for. So
it's also that's like going to school too. Like,
oh yeah.
It doesn't mean it necessarily would define your art ultimately.
Yep.
But to have a good baseline in what what built it, you know, learning how Bill Black played. There's no shame in that. Just at some point, you got to make it your own. You know what I mean? But sure, of course you should. You know, I only listen to. You know, I think people assume the Shack Shakers were totally into like wild, crazy, out there music they've just never heard yet. But the fact is, we listen to Jimmy Martin and, you know, and the Rock and Roll Trio and whatever, you know, pretty normal music, Fair and Young and Slim and Slam and, you know, Hoosier Hot Shots. You know, we just figured out our own way of doing that, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. You know, I kind of see always when I was looking at Shack Shakers and, you know, thinking about it, there was kind of like a little bit of a Tom Waits approach of producing records, but, you know, this more rootsy style. And which, you know, Tom Waits is one of my favorites. So,
Yeah, mine too.
Yep. So,
well,
do you see that? Like, was that an influence a little bit, you know, as a producing
on a production level, kind of, because the thing I liked about Tom Waits that isn't obvious is I heard a lot of people making records in the roots world. They're making them on very modern, nice gear like Pro Tools, and then trying to make them sound more old and degraded, which never quite works. It maybe a little. For me, I could never make that work. But what Tom Waits did was he got all these crappy junkyard instruments and got the best engineers in the best studios and did really hi-fi recordings of really small, trashy sounding elements. And that's what we tried to do a lot of in the Shack Shakers. I mean, there's some on the Believe record, JD made me play this bass guitar on a couple of songs that he found in a yard sale for like $8. And I wasn't allowed to change the strings. It's this little Japanese bass. And when you go from the 1 chord to the 5 chord or whatever, I had to stop and retune the bass to be able to play in that, and then punch that in, just because he wanted that sound of something that's about to fall apart and about to break. And it's on a song called "Piss and Vinegar" off the Believe record. It's one of my favorite bass sounds I've ever gotten.
Wow. I have to check it out right after the stream.
You just make it work, you know?
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that I love that approach. Kind of, it sounds like it's gonna fall apart, but it's still there, and it sounds amazing.
It's a beautiful thing about music that almost, it's like possibly the only evidence that there's such a thing as a God is that music is, you know, it's like it doesn't look good with the couch. It doesn't help anything. It doesn't serve any real function, except we can't imagine not having it. And there's something about musicians who are, I think, real musicians in particular, but not necessarily, who get in a room together. And how many times have you been in a thing, Djordje, where you're playing with a band, somebody takes a left turn that no one planned on, it might have even been a mistake, and everybody in the band follows, and that you find this whole brand new thing completely on accident just because everybody was willing to go there. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. I know, and I agree.
That's like witchcraft, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's unexplainable. It's the reason I'm still as excited about music as I ever was, you know?
It's magic. You know, like we all have, you know, hard times in our lives when we're questioning our, you know, motifs and decisions and this. But, you know, if you give up on music, it's kind of like you give up on yourself. It's just like, oh.
Yeah, it would be for me.
Yeah.
And at this point, I don't know about you, you've been playing a minute too, you know? So after a certain amount of time, I go like, it went from, for me, I don't remember where it changed, but it went from, I don't want to do anything else. It wasn't really necessarily about money, except you have to make money if this is the only thing you want to do. And the only way to get, for me, I don't think I can get really world class at this unless I just only do this. And this is what my mind is on. It's not on it after I'm done with my job.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so then you get to a certain level, and then a bunch of years go by, and you go like, well, what else would I do now? I don't know how to do anything. I'm not even that good at what I'm good at, you know?
Yeah. It's it's interesting. It's interesting.
But, you know, it's a great place to be stuck. You know, it's like, nothing has ever grabbed me and kept me the way music's been with me, like since I was 13 years old. And just nothing's ever come close, which might explain why I've been divorced twice.
Well, yeah, I've been playing bass for over 30 years now, so upright bass. So yes,
that's beautiful.
It's definitely been a minute.
You've been playing longer than me, and I'm like 112 years old. You're like what, 26?
Just turned 44.
You take better care of yourself than me.
Well, I moved to California. You moved out of it.
I know. Yeah. I could be getting a tan and going to the gym again.
I'm going to the beach right after the Slapsville.
Oh, good for you.
So is there anything else that you would like to mention about Shack Shakers?
No, just that it was one of my favorite things I've ever done. I think I left at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that JD and I are still very close. And I'm glad that there's a chance we may make another record. I would be really excited to do that because I really admire him a great deal, and he's a dear friend. I mean, I would hate to think we'll never work together. I played with him once at a Blue Moon when he does like a string band thing or something.
Oh yeah, I think I've seen that you posted that.
I was supposed to sub for Fuller.
Oh,
there was one gig he couldn't do, some festival in Louisville, and it just so happened I had a gig I thought canceled, an Eskimo Brothers gig, but then the gig uncanceled.
Oh, okay.
And I couldn't do it, but in a way I was a tiny bit relieved, you know, because I've never played with the new guys. You know, it's a whole new band, and I liked them. I recommended that guitar player Gary, and the drummer Preston is an old buddy, but I didn't really play with them much.
And so after the Shack Shakers, I mean, actually, you started playing with the Eskimo Brothers while you were in Shack Shakers. So since you stopped playing with the Shack Shakers, Eskimo Brothers have been your main gig?
Yeah, I guess you would say that. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Joe Fick plays with Eskimo Brothers sometimes, right?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Talk about that. I'll be right back. Give me 20 seconds, swear.
All right. 20 seconds for Mark. So I would like to remind you to subscribe. Slap that subscribe button and make sure not to miss any of these shows. I think that you have to ring the bell, whatever that means. I think that it's pushing that bell on YouTube as well, so you actually get notified, because you're not going to get notified if you subscribe. So apparently that's not enough. So make sure to do that, and make sure to slap the like button as well. Leave the comment if you'd like me to feature someone under the video, not on the side. All right. Seems that Mark is coming back.
Sorry about that.
And if you'd like to support the channel, go to the Patreon and check out all these links below. Patreon, Venmo, PayPal.
Sorry,
and here's Mark.
I was in a van since 7 this morning, so it just occurred to me there was an emergency.
You should have seen Jeff Raffredo's Slapstream. And and then Colin from the Brains.
Okay.
Yeah, he took like quite a few.
Oh, this will be the only one. I mean, it's early in the day, so all I've got in my system is a few cups of coffee. But and
Chris Rhodes is here. I had him here a couple of weeks ago, and he wrote, "Hi guys, this is a great interview. Loving every bit of this."
Have you done Chris? That guy.
I did it. Yeah. I did it like
a bass playing fool right there.
He's
become a real good buddy. I really admire Chris. He's just a good person.
He is. Yeah, he's one of the first bass players that I met after I moved to the States. It was
now you were what were you asking me about Eskimo Brothers?
So Joe Fick plays sometimes with Eskimo Brothers, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a convoluted story. Like I've known Joe way longer than I've known David Graham.
Uh-huh.
But and when I was playing with Shack Shakers, David had called me for a while to do some Broadway gigs, just fill-in gigs. Because him and Joe play a few times, but then Joe plays in other bands, and David does other things, and I kind of blew him off because I thought, well, if you want Joe, I'm not going to do what Joe does. I adore Joe, but I do my own thing, and it's just not going to be the same, and you probably won't even like it. And then Joe talked me into it. Joe called me and goes, so just do a couple gigs with these guys, see what you think. I think they're really good. So I did. And now David and Joe probably play when David's in town, they play together probably 3 nights a week downtown at local gigs. And I play 1 night a week with David downtown, but I do all the tours and I play on the records and produce the records. And Joe, I think he sang on one of the records. I don't know that Joe's as interested in studio work, whereas I'm kind of like love studio work. So that might be the difference. But we've even done gigs where me and Joe both play bass with David. Like we'll switch out playing electric and upright and stuff like that just for the heck of it, because there's certainly nothing bordering on a rivalry with me and Joe. We're pretty tight. And
it's kind of like you're both like bass players of the band.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes. But Joe's making babies these days. He doesn't want to go on the road, and touring's my favorite part, So I think it works out great. I think it's good for David too, because Joe and I play very differently. It's even a different drummer when most of the time when David plays in town. A guy named Billy Van Vliet, who's great drummer, but very different than Kevin Finn, who does the road dates. And I think David gets a kick out of it because it's 2 different approaches. Joe has a much different style than I do, and like I say, I love Joe's style, but I just kind of, at this point in life, I got my own thing that I like to do. And he's got his own thing he likes to do, which is kind of how I think it ought to be.
Oh, absolutely. You mentioned how much you like a studio work and that you produce lots of records. Is your approach to playing different when you play live or when you play on a record?
Sometimes.
Which way?
I think bass players make potentially good record producers. Because bass, as a rule, it's not really 100% about us ever. Where our job is to make other people look and sound good, right? I mean, mostly, and then we get our little shots, to shine. But they aren't that. We're mostly a supportive thing. So for a producer, I'm not just thinking about how cool my bass should sound. That's not really even at the top of my list. I don't want to make my basses sound fine, but I need to make sure the story gets told correctly and that the singer and mainly the writer feels like their vision is being played out well and being realized. So I bass players, in a sense, make really good record producers. And I'm going to keep saying that.
I like hearing that. That's I did like a little bit of producing, but it was never my thing. But I love studio work. I love recording.
Yeah, me too.
And I just did a record with Bernie Dressel. Do you know Bernie, the drummer?
I know who he is, yeah.
Yeah, I did a record with him, and it was fun. It's a big band record, and you got pretty much the best jazz musicians in LA are on it, and big variety of styles. From straight like bop and swing to like Frank Zappa tunes and Latin. It's fun, and he's unbelievable drummer. Definitely one of my favorites that I ever played with.
That's awesome.
Do you know on how many records you played on? How many records you reproduced, played on?
I don't know. I mean, I've been doing it a while. A lot. I mean, a lot, I guess. And I also, for years I did a lot of, and I still do background music for TV and film. So it's like, thousands and thousands of recordings at this point, on various instruments. But no, I don't know. I never really thought about it. I mean, right now I'm thinking about the next Eskimo Brothers record, because.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, we had some time to kill in the hotel room yesterday. We started working on new arrangements, and David's got, I don't know how many, you get those little voice memo things, and
Yeah.
you check, he's got, I bet you 100 or more.
Yeah.
Song ideas where he's just got maybe the first verse, or he's got a groove idea. And then we're in that process now of like, David
That's
likes
great.
to work that way. He works kind of slowly and puts little pieces together of 10 different things until they start to look like a thing, and he likes that process. And making demos, even, he loves making demos. I've never made a demo with JD, but it either made the record or it didn't, but David likes it's kind of more of an old school approach. You work the songs, you keep retooling the songs, you keep looking for different ways.
Right.
So David, he's our singer and guitar player. He's crazy good at both. Great performer. But he's originally a drummer, so the pocket is crazy important to him. And it's stuff, he's got to really sort it out. You can't tell him what it needs to be, or I can't. He's got that drummer's thing. It's very fine-tuned sense of exactly where you push and pull. So, you just have to give him the time to feel like he's happy and can do what he wants to do.
That's cool. That's I like that approach of working on the songs. You played with so many different artists, with so many different bands, and you've been playing a minute, as you said. What would you say was the highlight of your career?
There's been a bunch of them. I honestly, I mean, the first band I played with that signed a major, was when I was a kid. That was cool because that was in LA, and that was in the 80s, and so you had to be in perfect shape, and you had to have your clothes together, and you had to be singing perfect, and you always had to be playing perfect, and it turned me into a pro musician. And then there's a fella named Rick Elias who really got me most of my kind of for early, like, good paying pro gigs, and really nurtured kind of, I don't know why, honestly, we were just friends, and he sadly passed away recently, but he kind of put me on the map, I think, in a lot of ways. And some of that was, like I say, doing like gospel music and stuff, which I made really good dough and have a lot of friends. So there's people in the gospel world that don't know I've done anything else. And then there's people in the Shack Shakers world that don't know I did, Christian music or played in some gospel bands in my past. I don't do it much anymore, but except with Mike and the Altar Boys guys, just because we're still really close. But as a genre, I don't really have any interest in it anymore, just because it's a pretty narrow way of defining things, And
hopefully the highlight is not there yet.
That would be nice. In a cool way, the Eskimo Brothers is an odd full circle thing. It's so grassroots, like I said, they do everything in-house. We still travel in a van. You load your own gear. Ain't nobody changing my strings but me, and it's very kind of reminds me, I feel like I'm in the Minutemen or something. It feels very punk rock. Except by the end of the year, I make a better living than arena bands I've been with. You know what I mean? It's like they're just a working class, and they work really hard. And
the overhead is lower, I guess. So
we make a wonderful living, and we enjoy each other's company. And I really like the music a lot. And I like David has a lot of spontaneity. We've never made a set list. We've never had a rehearsal. we don't make set lists. David just he does what he feels that night, and if the song is really slow tonight and really fast tomorrow, then that's just what it is. And as a musician, it's crazy fun to try and follow that, and just you gotta. It was like similar to JD. You have to learn to like see what he's doing right there, make it sound like that. How can I make it sound like he looks? And that's a super fun challenge.
Yeah. How often do you write your own music?
Here and there, I was in my own bands. I write a lot of that background music and stuff like that for TV and film. And some of that's, lyric driven, some of it's not. But when I started playing with JD, I kind of felt like he was such a strong writer in such a different way. I didn't even want to try to contribute. I mean, I co-wrote a few things, but not much. Now I'm kind of putting together the pieces for a solo kind of like a roots record. And I just finished about a year ago. I put out a solo all electronic record, which has been another kind of weird fascination of mine since I was a little kid. Is just doing these things all by myself with, I got one of those rigs with the synthesizers that you plug all the patch cables into, and it's like takes up the size of a wall. And it's just for my own fun. Nobody cares about that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe somebody does. I doubt it. But it sells a small amount of units, but it gives me a lot of joy just to make music when nobody's around, So you got nobody to blame or credit but yourself, So that's pretty fun. And I'll help with arrangements a lot on Eskimo Brothers stuff, but not. I really think David and our road manager Brett, who's like a fourth member of the band but doesn't play or sing with us, he writes a lot with the band too. And I feel happiest just helping them kind of realize what they want to do. I don't know that I could add that much. They're in a groove that's really good. So I just save my songs for myself. Now I've compiled a good amount of kind of like roots, Americana, country, rockabilly-ish stuff that I'll probably, and it'll go on the Eskimo Brothers label. I think they had mentioned that they'd be glad to do that for me. Do a little solo record. Then we can just be an extension of the family,
That's interesting. I would like to check out that electronic record, and then
you say that now.
Yeah. Why?
Oh no, it's very weird music.
Weird in which way?
It's real glitchy, and the grooves aren't. There's not a lot of 4/4 going on, and it's a lot of polyrhythmic. And
that my heart beats in 7/8. So.
Oh, I know. Do that. Yeah, some of that Tariff to Hajduk stuff where they're just flying in 9/8 or whatever. Like, being a gringo from San Gabriel, California, I can't. It really, I have to work at it.
I have to say, some of the best musicians in that particular style, I played with them here. Like guys in there's like a couple guys in Bay Area, in Oakland and San Francisco. They're killing it. Like when I hire musicians to play in that style, I usually get that accordion guy from Dan Cantrell from over there. Amazing. And there's this French guy that I used to play with in Fish Tank Ensemble, who's excellent for Romani style, and excellent for all those odd time signature stuff.
Yeah.
And quite a few guys here in LA as well. So, it's definitely learnable.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, everything's learnable, and
yeah,
I think you should want to.
Yes. I mean, it's great. I mean, yeah.
And straight eights.
But that's the thing, like about 4/4, since we mentioned that, one of the main reasons why I wanted to move to the States is because to understand that pocket. And then I figured there's no way I'm going to get that. Like, just if I stayed in Serbia, I played with rockabilly and roots musicians over there. There are some good ones, but it's that kind of the same thing. I knew that I had to be here to understand the pocket, to understand that backbeat, and then that connection, with people that have this music in their blood.
Yeah.
Kind of the same thing with we talked about 7/8, 9/8, 11, 13, and any of those. That's what I grew up with, and that's really normal. It's nothing. I don't have to think about it as something. Oh, this is a little strange or something.
Yeah.
So it's just the approach and different expression. So
Well, yeah, you could explore 4/4 your whole life, can't you? I mean,
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Especially, I when I moved to Nashville, it's like you couldn't make money playing on Broadway. Now you can. I went there because there's all these old timers that knew country and roots music inside out, and I thought that's the only way I'm going to really learn all these subtleties, And I put in my time for a few years doing that. Then my best friend moves from LA to Nashville. I got him some pretty good gig. We lucked out, or I helped him get a really good gig, and which afforded him the chance to move out here, and he was looking for change.
Okay.
Then he started playing with me a little bit, doing roots music, and he's a killer rock drummer. He was in the band Agent Orange for many years, and killer rock drummer. But I think, like many people, he thought a shuffle is a shuffle, right? I'm like, no, man, it sounds like a beer commercial the way you're playing it right now. You gotta,
yeah.
And then
Exactly.
then he started playing with other people who he could listen to, because I'm his younger friend. He's not, how seriously he's going to take me. But then you get it with a couple big dogs like, Chuck Mead, or even he's played with David Graham. There's certain experiences where you go like, oh shit, I thought I understood this more than I do. And now he's one of the best country drummers in Nashville.
Wow.
So, but he had to make that leap and really dig into the tiny stuff to make it cool.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. You mentioned something that actually leads me to a next question. How things changed for you as a musician since you started playing music and now? What is the difference? What are the differences?
I play less eighth notes with a pick. I don't know, man. I listen to some every now and again. Somebody I worked with in one of my first bands hired me recently to do some recordings with them, and I played the session, from my home studio and sent it back to him in LA, and he said, like, then he sent me stuff I did in like '89 or something, going, no, I want it just like this. I'm like, dude, I don't even remember that. I don't know. And I listened to it. I was actually, it didn't suck or anything. It was good. But, your playing just kind of takes twists and turns. Sometimes it's just to suit the needs of who you're playing with. And that'll change your style a lot. I bet if you're anything like me, and I bet you are, you play with 3 different drummers, your style is probably altered 3 different ways, depending. Is this guy kind of loose, quiet, snappy drummer, or is he a heavy backbeat drummer? Is he drag a little? And it totally affects your playing. So then when you get in a band for a bunch of years, especially something like the Shack Chickers, where I was doing mostly one thing, I'd do a few sessions and produce when I could, but that kept me really, really busy. I found it was hard for me to do anything else for about a year. Like, I started playing with other people just to kind of relearn how to do it again. Just like, okay, can you play aggressive upright bass without slapping? Because this one artist doesn't like slapping. Okay, fine. So I don't know how to answer the question, because it all morphs depending on who you're trying to make happy, and who it could be wonderful players, but they take you out of your comfort zone of what you feel like you're really good at. And then next thing you know, actually, I'm pretty good at this. I can do this, Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I meant like more like a music business side, like how.
No, I'm
like
still an idiot.
More of that other thing that people are actually not aware. I mean, the audience.
Well, the business has changed a bunch. I used to when I moved to Nashville, I had a publishing deal as a writer, and got lucky with a couple of good cuts, so I could live off, publishing money. It was actually quite good. Now, because nobody buys records in the same way, and the new way that people buy music, less of it comes to the artists, like a lot less. So you have to figure out different kind of ways of doing it. You're like, okay, well, getting a sync fee on a commercial is more important to me now than getting a cut on a country record. It would actually pay me better. And I'm not really money upset. I'm not really a money person. I don't really care. Somehow it's really worked out for me to just do my thing, and I get paid, but and it always seems to be enough. David Graham takes great care of me in that regard. And I mean, it's really important to him that his guys are taken care of. And but yes, like sync fees are better than publishing, because publishing isn't as big a deal anymore. I think you really got to still be able to prove it live and be willing to get in the van or the bus or whatever you got and do that. I play more live than I used to, because you kind of have to make a decent living, but I don't really care because I love it anyway. And then session work helps out a lot. So I think I do more session work now than I used to, because it kind of helps keep the bills paid. I don't like reducing music to money terms, but we all got to make a living, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you mentioned about sync, I own a little sync shop with a partner, and that's kind of like a big and important thing. And then and things are changing so much now. They have all these. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? Like even with that stuff, now they have basically computers, the machine learning programs that compose music that it's good.
Yeah.
It's not liveless. It's still not as good as like Mozart or somebody amazing composer or something.
Yeah.
But with more references, you get like a pretty good stuff. And I'm like, it's kind of it's bumming me out a little bit, but it is what it is, so we all have to
the fact that anybody can make a record in their bedroom now is the good news and the bad news, because there have been some great surprises by kids making records in their bedroom and it turns out they're incredibly talented. But that's a very rare exception. There's a lot more really records that don't need to exist, because they're so easy to make.
Absolutely. It's quantity over quality these days.
Something that's interesting too about like recording, and I'm not against modern techniques. They're fine. But if you take like, I don't know, some epic tune like Bohemian Rhapsody, let's say, it's just this ridiculous everything, but the kitchen sink is in that recording, and they did it with no synchronization, no computers, no MIDI. They had to cut tape, they had to do a million takes, they had to plot out that whole recording. Now we can do that same exact thing theoretically way more efficiently, way better, and in a fraction of the time. But where's the song that's that good? Or the production that's that good? The shortcuts didn't really, they don't appear to be helping, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah.
You still got to be the kind of person that's willing to go, like, this might take us 16 hours a day for the next 3 months, and are we willing to put ourselves through it for what we would consider great art? And
you're right.
I don't know.
There are definitely records.
I see why people wouldn't. It's a pain. But I don't feel a sense of choice about it. If I'm compelled to do something like that, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, for me, it takes like forever to finish my own records. So it's, I mean that definitely in that boat. Let's get back so before we get back to bass, are there any other artists that you played with that you would like to mention?
Oh, probably. I don't know. I mean, that
How's the time?
I'm currently playing with, like I said, the main thing is David Graham and Eskimo Brothers, and that's a really fulfilling gig, and I really enjoy it. And well, we're on the road right now, and I'll play with a fella named Derek Hoke, I highly recommend you look for his music. He's a really unique artist. I'm playing with him next Tuesday for the first time since the lockdown, so I'm excited about that. He's a dear friend. And I play with a country artist named Mark Colley, who is just like, he had his first hit in like 88 or 89, and he just last week put out his best record. So the guy's still, he's still a pretty heavy hitter. And I got to play with some really great people on that record. Kenny Greenberg and Chad Cromwell, Mike Rojas, some of these like incredible players and engineers. David Leonard engineered it, and he's a real treat. And then I got a little punk rock band I play with still that I sing for called Prayer Flags. And those are the main things I'm doing. And I would say by far, but definitely Eskimo Brothers by far is the main thing. It takes up the most of my time. And it forces me to turn down a lot of stuff. And I've turned down some pretty, I got to say, a couple of gigs, like they were hard to turn down because they're big gigs, but I love these guys, and we work year round, so by the end of the year, if I took 2 months off to do an arena tour or something like that, I'd still, by the end of the year, I'd be better off staying in the Eskimo Brothers, so it makes sense on every level. Financially, the friendship thing, we do all our holidays together, all our girlfriends and wives hang out together, and we've got a little family going these days, and I'm really enjoying it a great deal. Getting older too. It's like I like having people I can depend on and who I know got my back, and I got theirs and all that. So
that's all we can hope for.
Yeah.
So let's get back to bass now.
Okay.
What would you say were your biggest influences on your bass playing?
For the upright thing?
Well, or the upright, but feel free to mention the horizontal as well.
The strap on. Well, it's still kind of Willie Dixon. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it gets any more perfect than Willie Dixon. Then, as you start looking around more and more, you get like people like, speaking of more and more, Bob Moore. And it sounds cheesy because he's a more modern. Slam Stewart obviously is a huge one, and I played nothing like him, but what a unique individual. And but of the modern era guys, like since I started playing upright, I don't know. Jimmy Sutton's still kind of the king for me, for just tone and feel and taste. He's just a wonderful player. And Nicolas Dubochet, Nick, and I think he's just a monster. And Jake Irwin, really underrated player, I think. Hot Club Cowtown stuff, and he's wonderful. Chris Rhodes is tearing it up. Of course, Joe Fick is unbelievable. Those are the kind of the contemporary guys. And Vlad, whose last name only you can say, because Vlad Viorel, or how we say it.
Viorel, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. See, I can't do that little roll with my L at the end.
Vlad Viorel.
There you go. I still kind of freak out every time I hear him play. And Larry Taylor's been a big deal for a long time. I don't necessarily care about the Speed Demon guys. I mean, I think it's cool that some of those guys can do it, because I can't. I can't play as fast as some of those. I'm pretty fast, but not those guys are. But it's never really come up in my life either. It's like in a song, it's like it has to sound good in the music to me. I got no desire to try and put on a clinic or something, And really, I don't know about you, but like I tried to kind of keep practicing a bit during the pandemic. But I was practicing on my studio bass, which turns out is just way easier to play than my live bass. I still play a blast cult. I love it, but it plays very differently than I have a 48 Epiphone before that I record with. And I was trying to kind of keep limber and keep my thing up. And I remember even a few months ago calling Joe Fick and go like, hey, dude, can you come over and watch me play for a little while and tell me what's going on? I'm like, I was getting really stiff. And I just didn't feel like I had the facility that I used to have. You know, it's like something's wrong. And now, thank goodness, like David was super patient with me. And I'm freaking out to him, going like, dude, I don't think I can play anymore. I don't know what's going on. And he was totally cool about that. And now it's loosening back up and everything's coming back to where it ought to be. But God, it scared me to death for a minute. I don't know if you've ever had those moments, but it scared me to death.
I haven't played much during a pandemic, but I did this record with Bernie. It was a little bit challenging because it was really fast and it was all sight reading. And I'm fine with sight reading, but it was just like really fast and lots of lines and things. So it was not, I don't know. I like the challenge, but I would prefer if I was in a top shape, anytime before the pandemic. So, but it was good. I think that he just told me that sounds killer. So I'm
good. Yeah, it's been hard for me to get. Yeah, you got different hands than human beings normally have. There's something wrong with your hands in the best way. You play those. You play all steel strings still, right?
I play all steels, yes.
Which is impossible. And then you also play kind of high action, if I remember right.
I do, yeah.
Like, I don't know how you do. Like, my hands would just fall off. I don't know how you do it.
I don't know. I started playing with when I was a kid. I started playing spiral chords, so that's all I knew, and that's where I, made.
But they're not even play. They're not the solo gauge, are they?
No.
I use a Wyke on my E, and that's it.
Okay. No, I play like a regular set, and sometimes I play solo set. Like if I play with Tiger Army, if I go on tour, I like having a little bit of loosen sound. But then they've been making prototype strings for me for the last 5 or 6 years. Regular. They're not light, just medium, and they originally made those for cello, and they were originally for people allergic to nickel. Wow. And when I started, being one of their guys, they gave me, they said like, we made this set for you, and then we'd like you to try it. It's slightly less metallic, and I was like, oh, this is great, And then I tried them, and that would be probably my favorite set that I like.
Yeah, it's just I know when my first bass, because I didn't know I had spiral chords on it, and the action was pretty high because I didn't know how they're supposed to be set up, and of course your tone. I'm saying to the audience, if your strings are laying right off the fingerboard versus like Kevin Smith kind of high, there's a very huge difference in tone. Like a little bit higher, it starts getting a little bit thicker. Too high, you can't really get the slap to pop. But too low, you can't get it thick enough, or that's how I feel like, at least. But I still do. I came up with a string gauge that's probably, or a string combo that's probably idiotic, but it really works for me. But I use a solo gauge, Wyke, it was that, Spiral Core, or whatever the company is. Press. I can't remember. Anyway, the Wyke solo gauge E. I use a Yargar Dolce, which is a solo gauge steel A. Then I just use usually a Lenzner raw gut D and G, and that's just the sound I like. And I think it's not too dissimilar from what Willie Dixon did, 2 steels and 2 guts. And I just love the sound. I know Joe Fick still uses a raw gut D, G, and maybe even the A. And he might even use a wrapped gut E. I can't remember, but I've never been able to make that work. I need some steel on the bottom. But for the faster stuff on the D&G, I got to go gut, which is stupid. They're too expensive now. Like, I just bought a new set of strings, dude, because we got a lot of touring coming up. So I bought backup D&G because they break the most. So I got 6 strings, $460 or something like that. It's no one should do that. You know, Thomas LaRue, he plays those old, what are those things? Rotos. And supposedly, if you keep them on the bass for 10 years, they start sounding awesome. I've never had the patience to wait till they sound awesome. But I think even Jeff Fireball uses them now too. They're super cheap. They don't break. They last forever. And I just can't quite make it work. I wish I could. Because I change strings 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah. Well,
I'm jealous of those guys.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, you know, for me, it was, you know, I mean, I haven't bought a set of strings for, I don't know, 10 years or something. But it's, but I usually change maybe twice a year or something. But it's always domestic. And they've been good for me. And I love domestic.
I have domestic strings on my Beetle bass, and that's it.
All right. Okay. As far as your gear, I wanted to ask you on that. Like, so we talked about strings. Well, how many upright basses you have, and what are they?
Just 2. I got my Blast Cult still, and I still love it. It's been my main bass since I got it, you know. And I've been playing live, like, only basses that Jason Burns builds for, gosh, I don't know how long now, since the early 2000s.
Oh wow!
And I went from, you know, King double bass to Blast Cult, and I probably had 6 or 8 Kings, and I've had 2 Blast Cults. Now I just kept the 1 Blast Cult, and I've got a 1948 Epiphone B4, which is the same bass I use on all those Bill Haley and the Comets records, which is one of the best slap bass sounds, I think, on any recording ever. If you ask me, those old Comets records, if you're a student of slap upright, the tone is kind of perfect. So I always wanted one of those, and I found one, and it's pretty darn cool. I like it. And a truckload of electrics and guitars, but just 2 uprights. I mean, once you get cases for them and a couple of bags and stuff, like, where do you put them? You
know? Yeah, I know. And as far as what's your favorite choice for the pickups?
Dude, I'm still using the last batch of Blast Cults that Burns sent me, and I don't use a clicky anymore. I haven't used a clicky in years. I like them. I see the value, but they've never sounded good on my particular Blast Cult. You know, some basses just sound different. I moved the pickup everywhere, tried to make it work. I just never could. So I just use a single Blast Cult element, and it's held up for like 12 years now. And I've got a couple backups just in case, but I haven't needed them yet. And I kind of wanted, because I don't think he's going to be doing it much longer, I kind of wanted to get one of those Richard Barbera upright pickups like Dave Rowe and Joe Fick use, just to try it. But I can't seem to get him to make me one right now. So then I like those. And for amps, I'm endorsed by Mesa Boogie, and I'm pretty happy with their amplifiers. I've got one of their new ones. It's called a TT800, and it's a 2-channel amp. One's really clean, and one sounds more like an old kind of their old Boogie amp called a 400 Plus. It's like more of a 2B sounding thing. So, and Eskimo Brothers, I play electric and upright on every gig, and switch back and forth depending on what David wants to do, and whatever I feel, you know, well, I either hear him start a tune, or he gives me a second, or he tells me to switch or whatever. But it happens pretty quick. So I got a rig that I can set up very quickly. So I have a 2-channel amp. I'm also endorsed by Grace Design, so I use a Grace Felix preamp. I really, really like that a lot. And I've kind of been building my own cabs for probably I don't know, at least a decade. And
that's what I wanted to ask you. Is that like still GreenBoy?
Mostly, yeah.
Okay.
Almost only. I have one other model cab that another fella and I designed together, and I played it a whole lot, but I didn't really put them up for sale. A couple of people talked me into making them one, but I only made maybe half a dozen of those, whereas I made a couple hundred GreenBoy cabs. And I kind of burned out on that a little bit. I haven't been making cabs for probably pushing 2 years now, and I don't know when I will again, but I might. I've just been too busy doing music, and there's not a lot of money in the cab thing. It was just more of a fun hobby that paid a couple of bucks. But and in fact, oddly enough, I the last couple of tours, I blew some mid drivers out in one of my cabs, and we had too many gigs. I didn't have time to, all these parts are back ordered these days. It's like takes forever to get anything right now. So I just ran to a store and bought a Bergantino 212 cab, and it's actually a great little cab. I like it. I'm using it right now. It's a good little cab. I don't know if wouldn't say I like it better than the GreenBoy 212. Like the GreenBoy F212, I think might be the best upright bass cabinet ever made, or
so 12s are your favorites?
Huh?
12s are your favorites?
Not necessarily. It just happened. I don't really buy into like this side speaker sounds better than this side and these sides sounds like this, and it depends on what we're talking about. It's a very specific thing. It just so happens my favorite GreenBoy cabinet is a 212 cab. And it just so happens I bought a Bergantino 212 because the size and for the output and fitting it in the van and all that, it kind of just worked out to seemed like a good way to get by for now. But I mean, I'm endorsed by Mesa, and they're sending me a 215 and a 115 that I may take out to a couple residency gigs or like Sturgis or something like that. And those are killer cabinets too, but there's just something about the GreenBoy 212, F212, I think is a little bit special. Kim Neckerman uses a couple of them. And Jason Hoyt, he's got one. I made him. He was on the stream earlier. And it's just a really special cab for upright. It takes a zillion watts. It's not that big or heavy. And they disperse really well in the room. But I don't know. There's a lot of good stuff out there. I'm not necessarily going to peddle my own things on it.
You have a question from Daniel Whalen. He's asking, is Dave Green still in GreenBoy?
Well, Dave Green is GreenBoy.
Okay.
And I assume so. I haven't talked to Dave in like 6 months or so. He, I think he wants me to start building cabs again. I'm not feeling it right now, and the Eskimo Brothers thing is keeping me too busy anyway.
Nice. So Hoyt just wrote, still beating up the F212 you made me.
So. Yeah, that's an awesome cab. Yeah, I love those cabs. I've got one on my workbench right now. I've been trying to finish putting together, but I just haven't had time, or I haven't made time, whatever you want to say.
And how are so you mentioned 15s? Usually upright bass players are not that crazy about 15s, but you like it?
Again, it depends on the cab, the design of the cab itself. Sometimes they're awesome, sometimes they're not. I've got one cab. I swear to God, it's a great cab. It's 118 with 2 small speakers, and that's one of my own designs. It's a killer bass cabinet. Courtney from Goddamn Gallows plays one, and it's an awesome cabinet. I blew a couple of those mid drivers. Like I said, when they were on back order, I just went to the store and bought one, just because we have too many gigs for me to be waiting around.
And when you play live, are you using any pedals or any effects, or it's
no? Okay, no, just the Grace upright preamp, and I got a little splitter box. Okay, so the upright goes straight to the amp. The electric goes straight to the amp. The upright goes through the Grace. And
when you play shows, do you have like any special way for warming up, or you just go for it?
No, I just beat on it for a couple seconds before we start. I still, I do it. It's almost superstition again because I don't have your hands. I used to, when I first started playing with the shack shakers, I would bleed so much. Once you blister and start bleeding, there's just really nothing you can do for the whole gig. You're kind of screwed. But you can't, stop. If it's a slap gig, you got to keep doing that. And it's just brutal. So I started putting a little bit of coach tape, that cloth sports tape, just on my middle finger on my right hand, and I still do it like almost out of superstition every single gig. I always put one wrap, just one thin wrap, just to be safe. And I haven't gotten a blister in years, but I also don't want to. But I kind of got used to playing with the tape on my finger, and it doesn't bother me anymore.
Yeah, I do that sometimes if I don't play for too long, or if I go on a vacation and I'm like swimming in a salty water, and then
That's smart.
that can affect your calluses. You don't want that. Do you have? I like asking like experienced musicians this because it might be helpful for younger players. Do you have any advice how to get a gig? Like, what is the best approach for you in order to be involved with a band, like a touring band, or just a band that you would like to be involved with?
I don't know if there's any real secrets to it. Do you think? I mean, I think if you're a nice person and you make sure to get your face around town. You know, when I first moved to Nashville, I would just go drink a half of a beer in 10 different clubs every night, and just so people see you. So you got to be visible. And then from there, you just got, don't be a dick and show up on time, you know, and it's the same rules as anything else in life, you know. And it's trickier in a town like Nashville, you know. It's like you just got to be super, super good. You know, there's just no mediocre players that are able to accomplish much, you know. So that, I think that part's a given. You know, it's like you just got to care about your craft more than the other guys in line, you know.
You mentioned something that earlier, that you had band leaders telling you like, oh, I don't want slap or this, you know. How often does that happen? Like, you know, how often do you have to adjust your own style, like in order to fulfill that base duty that it's asked from you, like from, you know, a band leader? So
it depends on the gig, you know. Derek Hoke just doesn't like it in a general sort of way, so I just never did it. With Eskimo Brothers, like sometimes Dave will go, you know, I don't think we need it on this tune. Maybe just save it for the chorus, or save it for your solo on this song. But then most songs, I get a pretty good amount of freedom, I would say. But if they feel strongly about something, sure, I want to hear it. I want to hear what they have to say. You know, maybe they're probably right. I wouldn't know.
Do you have any suggestions again for younger players, like if you can point out like some of your mistakes and then help out, like, you know, kids, like saying like, hey, you can avoid this, like, so in your career, as far as bass playing goes, of course.
I think to a certain extent it depends on how serious they really are. Like, I know when I was a kid, I had killer gear before I had a car. And then when I had a car, all I could afford was, you know, it was that cliche musician joke where I put, you know, $5,000 worth of gear into a $500 car because it was more important to me. And the singer of Eskimo Brothers, by the way, has been texting me the entire time, just insulting me and saying all these horrible things to try and distract me from this interview. But like these people are like, hey, where can I find like a really great upright bass for $500? And I'm like, well, you probably can't. You know, it's like, how much do you want to do this? You know, you got to be willing to sacrifice a bit if you really love it, and save up for at least a decent level instrument. You know, it's probably going to cost you $1,000, and then, you know, once you get into strings and setups, and then how do I mic it without it, or, you know, amplify it without it howling, and how do I get good tone, and what about the amp and cab? All that. I mean, you're just gonna have to invest. You know, I think you just do, and it really pays to learn about EQ if you're an upright guy, because, you know, you get in one room and you don't know why this one frequency is howling, and I just think it pays to learn that stuff and get into the craft of it. I just don't know. Being a great musician doesn't really have a lot of shortcuts, I don't think.
Well, I agree with you. You know, I went to the longest possible route. So
I
Yeah.
remember you talking about conservatory where you were saying it's like you got to where you could only play with one finger because the others were too bloody. Do you
Oh
remember
yeah, I mean that was like my slap thing, you know. It's interesting. Yeah, but that was like when I was a kid and I was just really into slap. I wanted to make sure that I can slap with each finger by itself so that it's strong enough. So, so I did that. But I was a kid, you know. I tried all kinds of stuff. So.
Yeah, because you do those weird combos where you'll slap with like 3 strings at once and stuff. Sometimes
I do. Yes.
Yeah. You're out of your mind. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds cool, you know, because you have that, you know, the if you want to have those chords, and you don't want to have them like tring, you know, like in arpeggio. You want to have them kind of like
you don't want to play flamenco on upright. Well, that's where I think steel strings are kind of neat when you do that chordal stuff, or you know, where you're slapping like 2 or 3 notes at once. That's where the steel strings give a nice definition.
I mean, for me, it's like, you know, I play a lot with the bow, and I want to be able to play like fast bebop lines, and you know, or like Balkan, Middle Eastern like melodies, and then that really, you know, bass sings more with steel strings. And for me, I always have to find kind of balance in between everything. So because I'm not just playing,
sure,
just 4 on the floor slap, or just the bow, or so always kind of has to work like for all of those styles.
Yeah, I've been playing around with the idea of getting a third upright just so I can keep it strung up with steel, just so mostly for Arco, because I just don't play that much Arco anymore. It kind of bums me out.
Oh, that's what I wanted to ask you. Do you play Arco?
Poorly, but yeah, there's Arco on a few Shack Shakers records actually.
Oh, okay.
But I think, yeah, there's definitely Arco on some of it, and various records and certain bands I've played a lot of Arco, but then I just kind of let it drop off. But I'm really kind of itching to get that back, because that's its own. That's like learning an instrument, just playing Arco.
No, yeah. Is there anything that you would recommend for fellow bass players, like to practice on a daily basis?
Man, I still think that first, like, Ron Carter method book, and run scales and run them in every key, and run them in the keys you don't like. You know, run them in E flat and B, A flat and stuff like that, and really get your ear together, because like that was another thing with the pandemic, that my intonation really was suffering a bit just from not doing. I thought I had that pretty well down by this point, but you got to keep that up apparently. But really learn to train your ear and go through your scales, and you know, play along. Even if you could get a piano or something, playing major minor scales, all in the modes and all that stuff, so you can play along and check your intonation. I mean, that's the make or break thing, I think, with upright guys, is their intonation as much as anything. Some of them have really, really bad intonation.
Yeah, we all have to work on it slowly our whole lives, and we're never going to reach it. So we're never going to reach the perfect one. But yes,
yeah,
it's definitely essential. I know that you're a huge slap bass fan, and a few years ago, it might be even 10 years ago, you started a project that was dedicated to slap bass, and you wanted to make a documentary about it. What happened with it?
Yeah, that's, oh man, that is kind of a heartbreaking thing. I put a couple things on YouTube of rough edits I did. One was on Joe Fick and the lower Broadway scene, and one was on well, I don't think I put that one up. I did one on Two Man Gentleman Band. You sent me a ton of killer footage, and I chopped all that up into what I thought was a really good segment. That was all going to be for the bonus DVD, you know, a real in-depth thing from each guy. And I had some really good ones with you, with Jimmy Sutton, with Joe Fick, a few of the people I thought were at the very top of the game, you know, in my opinion. And I kind of had a falling out. I had this guy that was going to do the editing. He was doing the camera work, and we just had a really not a good agreement about how it should be done. and he really wanted to focus on like the more punk psychobilly side of it. And I wanted it to be everything. So I kind of took it away from him and bought Premiere and started learning how to edit. And I was actually getting pretty decent at it. And it was coming along that I went through a really bad breakup that I wasn't expecting during the making of that. And a bunch of the hard drives and stuff got destroyed. And I just lost a whole bunch of that footage. And then, like, I don't know, 6 months later, I kind of started searching out more of it and trying to find it again and trying to remember how to edit again. And I just, by then, everything was kind of so dated, you know. Certain guys weren't even in that band anymore, you know, or whatever. Or they don't play that bass that they're bragging about, you know, anymore. It just seemed like it was too dated. And if I was ever going to do it again, I'd have to start over. And it was such an undertaking. I was like almost 3 years into the making of that. It just kind of broke my heart when all that stuff, you know, just was destroyed and taken away from me. So all at once that I just couldn't ever really worked up the heart to finish it. But I'm really bummed because, you know, I got, you know, Nicolas Dubichet actually took a train from France to Barcelona where I was playing just to do an interview, you know, and a couple other people, another Serbian fella, Ivan something, I think.
Oh yeah, Ivan Kovacevic.
Yeah, he did something. He was a sweet guy, and tried forever to get Kim, never got him. But I got like Jeff Eaton from Split Lip, of course, Jeff Fireball, Pete Midgard, you know, Pistol Pete from Twist and Tarantulas, and killer piece at Jimmy Sutton's studio with him. Yeah, I'm pretty bummed, but what are you gonna do? You know, I'm really heartbroken. I feel bad for the guys that thought, you know, that extended their time to help with it, and then with no reward, you know. But it was pretty heartbreaking. I really feel terrible about it.
Wow. I remember it was like you showed me some of the stuff and I thought like, wow, this is really cool. You know,
Someone should do it.
Yeah. Well, you know, who knows? Maybe I wouldn't do the Slapstream if there was, you know, a slap-based documentary out there.
You'd be good to do it because you want to do something similar of well-rounded styles and all that stuff, and I think you should.
Yeah, who knows? I think this is, you know, this Slapstream, these 51 episodes so far. It's
yeah, and gigs are starting to pick up again, so we got that. You know.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, and I don't know for how long. I'll try to keep this because there's at least about 20, 25 guys that I would really like to get on it, and then it's so it depends, you know. I really want to do that, so who knows for how long. I'm gonna be able to keep it going, you know, when the tours start happening again.
Definitely.
We'll see. It's you know, I think even with this, it's like lots of meat for people to learn and then, you know, and find out about all these amazing players.
Yeah.
I think that I pretty much asked you everything I wanted to ask. Is there anything that you would like to mention?
Not off the top of my head. We're playing Philly tonight, and we're playing Skinny Dennis in Brooklyn tomorrow. What's the gig tonight? What's the venue? Hold on. Drummer doesn't know either. But no, I think we're pretty good. In fact, they're starting to kind of do this because I got to go.
Oh yeah, okay.
Gotta go.
The Rusty Nail.
Oh, the Rusty Nail.
Oh, so you were right. Okay.
That's rare. Yeah, no, other than that, man, I've been really enjoying the podcast, and you have some of my favorite people. I mean, the podcast, the live stream, some of my favorite humans and players. You know, I think it's a real good service you're doing, man.
Oh, thank you.
Now, one of us needs to do one on you.
Yeah, Kim suggested that, like, so like, oh, yeah, you should do that. So yeah, one of these days. I still have like other people more important, you know, to present. So
yeah, I don't know about that.
So my last question is always like, what inspired you after all these years? What inspired you to still do what you do?
Gosh, I wish I knew. I don't like anything else. So I don't really know. You know, it's like it still gets me out of bed in the morning. You know, just like playing music with people you like and making people happy. You know, it's gosh, what a great way to make a living. I feel super, super privileged. So it's just music, man. You get that bug. I don't know how you. What John Prine said that it's like, if you think getting into the music business is hard, try getting out. You know, it's just, I don't know what else I just, nothing else interests me. So.
That's what I'm saying. You know, we don't really have a choice. You know,
no, not much.
This is it. This is it. All right, man. I'm really glad, you know, we were able to do this. You made time for this. I'm really glad that things are picking up for you and for the rest of the country. Hopefully that gigs are coming back. That rock and roll and, you know, slap bass is coming back with you and all the other people that are starting to play again. It was great talking to you. It's been a while, and looking forward for the next time.
Yes, sir. I hope to see you soon.
All righty, man.
Bye.
Have a good one. All right, that was the 51st episode of the Slapstream with Djordje, live from Slapsville. I would like to thank everyone that signed up for Patreon. If you'd like to support the channel and my work, make sure to go to that description of this video. And I just updated a bunch of things. So there's like some cool new songs, some stories. And so I wonder what you think about it. And there's already quite a few people on there, so I assume it's a good quality content. And I promise they're going to be just more and more. Besides that, the other ways like to support the Slapstream is to donate via Venmo and PayPal. And also, if you want to get your T-shirt, Art of Slap Bass T-shirts are available on at this link that it's going like that. And lots of people bought it, and I'm impressed. This last batch, you know, I missed a few orders, so they were already shipped. So if your T-shirt's not there yet, I sent out everything, so it should be there next week. So I'm sorry for that. I was in Europe and then missed a couple orders, but everything should be fine now. And I'm still doing this. You know, I missed a couple episodes. I'm sorry for that, but I'll do my best, like, to continue providing the best quality slap bass content for you. And in the meantime, if you haven't subscribed, slap that subscribe button, slap that like, and leave a comment. Leave a comment and let me know who you'd like me to feature next. I already have quite a few people lined up. And don't forget, never fret, slide it in smooth, and keep it in a groove. This is Djordje, and I will see you next Saturday.